Hi, so welcome to a video about piano. What I would like to do in this video is to take you through the chordal passage as the main passage of the 18th variation of Rachmaninoff's variations on a theme by Paganini. So the chords are the easiest passage in this variation. And so I just thought I'd make a little video on it. It falls neatly into, I'm using this edition here, I'll just show you, this one here. So, I think it's an old Russian one, it's a Soviet one I think. But anyway, it's in English words. You can get it free online from various free music sites. I think it's on the PSL. I don't use that one, but it's on that one, and it's also on other free music score sites. So it's really small. It's written really small because it's the whole score of the whole orchestra. Well, it's got not just the piano. But so it's really difficult to read because it's so small, and that's unfortunate for Rachmaninoff, because the thing about Rachmaninoff is you need to look very carefully, because he changes the note by a semitone and so forth, and if you can't see it well in the chords, little semitone here, semitone there, which actually makes a big difference. Of course, and if you can't see it clearly, it's a problem. So I wouldn't recommend this score, but given that it's free, it's probably the one that you have. So since we're just doing the chords, it's the most satisfying thing to play anyway, of this passage, really. And then if you want to do the beginning and end bits, then you can do that on your own. I'm not going to do a video about that. If you can look at my videos, I've done this piece. I think I've done it twice on 2 videos, and you can have a look at the whole thing there. But just to do these chords, so anyone can do these. If you have no experience of playing the piano, you can do these chords, and they're very satisfying to play. This is the sort of middle section of this variation, and within this middle section there's sort of two in a way main big chordal passages with about I don't know, maybe 30 in total, 30 chords, 40 chords. But it's the same chords, so it's just 20 chords twice. They're the big fat chords, the fattest, the most notes anyway, the most keys under your fingers, and it's the easiest part of it. So I'm just going to go through the first part before those 2 big chordal sections, which are exactly the same, more or less. There are a few little notes which are not there in the first one and they're there in the second one, or vice versa. That's what I was saying before. You've got to look very carefully at the score. But they're the big ones. So it's where it says here, it's got the 8 there. It's the octave up. Yeah, that one there, starting there, and it's here again. Yeah, with the octave, the 8. So it's an octave higher to the right, and that's the bit I mean. It's there and it's there again. It's just exactly the same, except for a few notes. And that's the main, I would say, the main part of this middle section. The middle section starts here, starting from these 3 here. 1, 2, 3. The whole thing starts here. See, 18th variation. After 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 bars. It's this 13 bars. I think 13. Well, it's the 13th bar. It's difficult to read. So it's on the 13th bar. This second half of the 13th bar is where we're going to begin. So it's 4, 1, 2, 3, going down. Ta ta ti ta That's the first 4. And these bars up to the first of these big sections, these bars are divided very neatly, so it's very easy. It's always 4 going down. 1, 2, 3, 4 chords in both hands. Yeah, going down, sorry, there. Okay. And then it's always 5 going up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then another 4 going down. Ta 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 ta. And 5 going up. Ta 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 ta. And then 4 going down. Ta 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 ta. And 5 going up. So it's always 4 going down and 5 going up for 1, sort of 2 is 2 bars already. 3, 4 bars. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. About because it changes slightly here, so it's about 9 bars. It's always going 4, 5, 4, 5, 4 going down and 5 going up. Now on this bar here, it's slightly changed, so it's not 4 going up anymore, it's 3 going up, but it's still 5 going, it's 3 going down. They're not quite going down, they're sort of going up and down, but the 5s going up continue here. And then instead of so yeah, instead of so the 5s going up sort of happen twice here actually. Okay, and then there's, instead of the 4, it's kind of 3, so it changes slightly here, and then we're onto the big section. You see there and there, like I said, the big and easy sections. Okay, and it ends there. That's it. These 3 notes. After these 3 notes, we'll just play some kind of a D major chord, a D flat major octave, and that'll end it. Because this is, you know, relatively more difficult, as is the beginning bit. These sections will miss out up there as well, and we're, yeah, just beginning with those chords. So with that said, I'd like to say that it's a few words on Rachmaninoff. He is, as I said, you've got to look out for individual notes, but this is the easiest piece of everything he's written, I would say. Especially these chords. I haven't played everything that Rachmaninoff has written, but I have had a go at. I've done the whole of the Ossia Cadenza, which I've now forgotten. The thing about Rachmaninoff, apart from you having to check each note very carefully in the chords, because they might be changing, they might not follow a strict pattern, although it seems as though they do at first. That's one thing. The other thing is, it's very easy to forget Rachmaninoff's music if you're trying to memorize it. First of all, and the third thing is that it's difficult to sight read. I can't sight read anyway. But even my very good teacher in Moscow could not sight read the third concerto. I think the cadenza passage. I think that's what I was showing her. For example, so therefore you've got to memorize it, unless you're some genius sight reader. And my theory is no one can just sight read any music, but I may be wrong. I think that everybody who claims just to sight read a passage of music, if it's anything of any complexity, like a Rachmaninoff concerto, actually has already done it before, and it's not the first time. They're just sight reading from scratch. They've never seen the work before, and they're just going to play it at the right tempo, and I don't think it's possible. That's just my theory. But easier pieces, maybe it is possible to sight read them, of course, you know. But there's a huge difference between a complex piece by Rachmaninoff and a simple, you know, a simple Beethoven, very simple Beethoven piece, for example. So there we go. That's my theory. So therefore, you've got 3 things to remember with Rachmaninoff. Number 1, you've got to check every note. You've got to look at every chord, especially. I'm really only talking about the chords. He's got very dense chords, and you've got to look at each note, because that's very important to do. The second thing is, especially where the patterns seem to be the same, but actually you'll find they change by 1 or 2 semitones, and that's a very important thing to do. Otherwise, you'll just make the same mistake and not really realize it. So that brings me on to the second thing to talk about, which is the sight read aspect. You can't really sight read Rachmaninoff's music. You might find some people on YouTube who seem as though they're doing that, but I would say they've already done it many times before. They know the piece, and they're just kind of, I'm afraid to say, pretending. So that's the second thing. You can't sight read Rachmaninoff's, not the difficult passages anyway. So therefore, look very carefully at each note on the paper. A third thing to say is it's very easy to forget. So once you learnt a piece, you've got to play it every day. Remember to play it every single day. If you don't, you will forget it. Those are my 3 tips about Rachmaninoff. And I'd just like to talk about Rachmaninoff as a composer. He had to leave Russia, and he became a concert pianist for a living. He composed a few other things in America, one of which was this Rhapsody, but really didn't do that much. Most of his quality writing was in Russia. The first 3 concertos, were in Russia. Were done in Russia, but the 4th concerto was, I think, written in. The 3rd was written in Dresden, I think, but it was finished off in Russia, and it was before he exiled himself to Russia, to America, via Norway. Actually, there's a very good book you can read by. I think it's the best book about Rachmaninoff. It's by 2 authors. I can't remember what it's called. It's just called Rachmaninoff. I can't remember the names of the authors, but it's quite good. It's the best one, I think. I wouldn't recommend any other writings about Rachmaninoff, actually, and I've read some other things, and it's just that one book. It's a fat book written by 2 authors, and I think it's the classic one. I can't remember their names. But anyway, so he became a concert pianist when he went to America, and his output necessarily diminished. He didn't write that much. So if we're comparing Rachmaninoff to the other great composers for piano and for orchestra, it's quite easy to disparage his work in a way as being, nothing like as inventive, but and maybe as being romantic in a bad sense of the word. And I've sadly become a bit more in agreement with that. But I think that we've got to remember that he was, his position in the history of music, and he was at the end of the in fact, he's considered a post-romantic composer. So it's not, his work is nothing like as inventive as Chopin's work, or Schubert's work, or obviously Beethoven's work. And it can seem like a bit of a sort of climb down in terms of artistic inventiveness and originality. And yet, I think that the main thing for me about playing Rachmaninoff is the chords. I've come across no other composer who writes such satisfying chords. They're just so amazing. In this passage, these big chords especially, which I said happened twice in this 18th variation, are amazing to play. Even more amazing is the third concerto chords in the cadenza, the ossia cadenza. Actually, it's in both cadenzas, because they both share the same chords after a while. The other cadenza, which I think was written later, that actually shares the same chords after a number of bars. They both are exactly the same, but they start off differently. I think I prefer the I now prefer the other cadenza. I don't like the ossia cadenza, the original cadenza, too much, because I don't find it as interesting as the other one. But I learnt the ossia one anyway, and it's a lot of hard work, and I promptly forgot it after I managed to get it, and then I just didn't play it anymore. It's not actually that. It's not worth learning that cadenza. If I were to do it again, I would suggest anyone to do the other cadenza. It's just much more interesting, in my opinion. And in fact, it shares the same fat chords as the ossia cadenza. But even better than that is the end of that concerto, the very end of the third movement. And there are some amazing chords there. So I recommend that as well. The very end of that third concerto. So for me, Rachmaninoff's chords are the best bit of it, and you get these chords in this passage, and if you only want to have those chords, this is the video for you. You can look at my other two videos to have the whole of this 18th variation. A word about the other versions of this. There are lots of other versions made which simulate the orchestra as well, and they you know, I wouldn't myself ever learn such a thing, but some people do, and there are lots of versions on YouTube. But you don't get the colour and the texture of these chords without the orchestra that you do if you just play this. I would say the best one to listen to on YouTube is Valentina Listizia's version, where she does it without orchestra, because you can really hear these colours come out very well, and you can see how much superior it is to these other versions which have tried to put in the orchestra as well. She's not my favourite pianist, but she does a really good version of it on YouTube. Okay, what else to say? Excuse me. Yeah, those are the main points I'd like to make. So I'm going to just go through the first. As I said, the chordal passage goes 4 up, 4 down and 5 up, 4 down, 5 up, 4 down, 5 up, all the way to the very end. At the very end, it's slightly changed. It becomes 3. It becomes 3 instead of 4, basically. The 5s going up continue all the way to the end. And then you get the easy section, which is the biggest chords, and that's the same twice. Okay, so without further ado, I will just do the first 3 or so. Maybe the first. I'll do it bar by bar. So this will be the first bar, or in Russian takt, the first takt, and it's this one that starts here. Okay, there we go. And it's written rubato. We must remember that Rachmaninoff didn't actually play the way that he wrote. He wrote these markings, you know, like rubato. He didn't play with much rubato, really. He didn't play in a very soppy, romantic kind of way. So you be careful about the validity of the markings. Okay, so I will begin to do it bar by bar. This is just an introductory video, and hopefully it will inspire you to learn this quite easy piece, really. Thank you. Just the chordal passage anyway, and then you can do the beginning and the end of it on your own, which is slightly more difficult.